Most people aren't afraid of market drops. They're afraid of not knowing how to respond when they happen. I see this every single day. Successful professionals in their 50s and early 60s, people who've saved well, done everything right, still feel this nagging sense that retirement could fall apart. And it's not because they don't have enough money. It's because they don't have a framework for making decisions when real life shows up. According to the 2025 EBRI Retirement Confidence Survey, only 67% of workers feel confident about retirement, and that number hasn't budged in years. Meanwhile, 70% are worried about cutting spending because of inflation, stock volatility, and rising housing costs. But here's what's interesting. It's not the volatility itself that's causing the anxiety. It's the uncertainty about what to do when volatility happens. I'm PJ Gibbs, a certified financial planner, and I help people within 10 years of retirement make confident income, tax, and investment decisions without guessing. If you're someone who's saved well throughout your career, but still feels uneasy about how retirement actually works, this video is for you. Let me ask you something. Have you ever looked at your retirement projection and thought, this looks fine on paper, but what happens when something goes wrong? You're not alone in that feeling. Most retirement plans are built on static assumptions. They assume you'll withdraw a fixed percentage every year adjusted for inflation. They assume average market returns over 30 years. They assume your expenses will stay relatively consistent. But that's not how life works. Let's say you retire at 62. In your first year, you might travel more than you ever will again. Maybe you're helping a child finish college. Maybe you're paying off a mortgage that won't be there in 5 years. Then you hit 65 and healthcare costs shift when Medicare kicks in. Later, you might downsize your home. Your expenses aren't a straight line. They're a moving target. And yet, most retirement plans treat them like they're carved in stone. That's the first reason these plans feel fragile. They're rigid. They don't bend when life happens. Here's the other problem. Most plans look fine until real life shows up. A bear market in your first few years of retirement, a surprise medical expense, an aging parent who needs help, suddenly that projection that looks so reassuring starts to feel a lot less certain. And that's when people start second guessing everything. Should I cut spending? Should I sell investments? Should I delay Social Security longer? Without a framework for answering those questions, every decision feels like a guess. And guessing doesn't build confidence, it erodes it. So if the problem isn't really about market drops, what is it? It's this. Most people don't have a framework for making decisions when things change. Think about the last time the market dropped 20 or 30%. Maybe you're thinking of 2008, maybe March 2020. Do you remember how it felt? Not just watching your account balance go down. That's uncomfortable for everyone. But the not knowing what to do about it. Should you move to cash? Should you stay the course? Should you cut your spending? Should you delay taking withdrawals? These are the questions that keep people up at night. And without a clear framework, the answers feel like guesswork. Here's what I've learned after years of helping people through these moments. The problem isn't the market. The market is going to do what it's going to do. The problem is not having a predefined response to what the market does. Let's go through a hypothetical scenario. Imagine you're 64. You just retired and the market drops 25% in the first 6 months. Your portfolio goes from 1.2 million to 900,000. What do you do? Most people in that situation feel stuck. If they keep withdrawing at the same rate, they're worried they'll run out of money. If they cut spending dramatically, they feel like they're sacrificing the retirement they worked so hard for. They're paralyzed because they don't know which decisions matter and which don't. That's the gap. It's not a money problem. It's a decision readiness problem. And that's exactly what a good retirement framework solves. So how do you build that framework? How do you move from feeling fragile to feeling confident? It starts with the understanding that retirement planning is not about predicting the future. It's about preparing for uncertainty. Let me share a concept that changes how a lot of people think about this. Instead of trying to control outcomes you can't control, like market returns or inflation, you focus on controlling your response to those outcomes. Here's a simple example. Let's say you retire and your portfolio is generating income. You've planned for a certain withdrawal rate. Maybe it's 4%, maybe it's 5%, and you're comfortable with that number. But then the market drops and suddenly your withdrawal rate jumps to 7% because your portfolio decreased. Without a framework, that moment feels like a crisis. With a framework, it's just a decision point. You already know the options. You can cut discretionary spending temporarily. You can tap a cash buffer you set aside for exactly this situation, or you can adjust your withdrawal slightly and let your portfolio recover over time. The key is You're not making that decision in the moment under stress. You made it years ago when you built the framework. Now, you're just following the plan. This is what behavioral finance research calls decision rules. Instead of relying on your emotions during a crisis, you rely on preset guidelines. And those guidelines remove the guesswork. They remove the panic. And they give you permission to adjust without feeling like you're failing. So here's another way to think about it. Imagine you're driving in the rain. You don't panic every time the road gets slippery. You adjust your speed, you keep more distance from other cars, you turn on your headlights. You don't stop driving. You just follow the rules that keep you safe. And that's exactly what a good retirement framework does. It gives you guardrails, boundaries that tell you when to adjust and when to stay the course. It doesn't eliminate uncertainty, but it does eliminate the paralysis that comes from not knowing what to do with that uncertainty. Now, I want to introduce a concept that's been game-changing for a lot of families I work with. It's called income guardrails. Today, we're not going to walk through the math or go through percentages. That's not the point of today's video. What I want you to understand is the mindset shift that guardrails can create. Most people think about retirement income in one of two ways. Either they take a fixed amount every year and hope it lasts, or they constantly worry about whether they're spending too much or maybe too little. Both approaches create stress. Guardrails are different. Instead of locking you into a fixed number, they give you boundaries. Think of them like lane markers on a highway. As long as you're between the lines, you're fine. If you drift too close to one side, you make a small correction. But you're not constantly overreacting or second guessing yourself. You're just following the boundaries. Here's why this matters so much. In good markets, when your portfolio is growing, you can spend a little more. Take that trip, help the grandkids. Do the things that make retirement meaningful to you. In challenging markets, when your portfolio takes a hit, you pull back slightly. Maybe you delay a big purchase, maybe you skip one trip, but you're not panicking and you're not making drastic changes that derail your lifestyle. The reason guardrails work is simple. They give you permission to adjust without feeling like you're failing. Adjusting isn't failure, it's how good plans stay intact. And here's the emotional benefit. You're not living in fear. You're not checking your account balance every day, wondering if you can afford to retire. You're living your life, making small adjustments when needed, and trusting that the framework you built will carry you through. That's what confidence feels like. Not certainty, confidence. And there's a big difference. Now, let me clear up a few things because I hear these objections all the time. First, this is not about market timing. I'm not saying you should try to predict when the market is going up or down. That's impossible, and anyone who tells you otherwise is selling you something. What I'm saying is this. You can have a plan for how you'll respond when the market inevitably drops. That's not forecasting, that's decision readiness. Second, this is not about chasing returns. You're not moving in and out of investments trying to beat the market. You're making small, pre-planned adjustments to your spending or your withdrawal strategy based on clear objective triggers. Third, this is not about being rigid. In fact, it's the opposite. Rigidity is what makes retirement feel fragile. Flexibility is what makes it sustainable. Let's go through another hypothetical example. Imagine someone who retires with a plan to spend $8,000 a month. In year 3, the market drops 20%. Their advisor tells them they need to cut spending to $6,000 a month to stay on track. That's a 25% cut. That's drastic. That feels like they failed. Now, imagine someone using a guardrails approach. Same scenario, they retire, spend $8,000 a month, the market drops 20% in year 3. But instead of a panic-induced 25% cut, their framework says, pull back to $7,500 for the next 12 months. We'll reassess next year. That's a 6% adjustment. It's noticeable, but it's not devastating, and it keeps the plan on track without derailing their lifestyle. See the difference? One approach feels like crisis management. The other feels like calm, deliberate planning. And that's the whole point. So where does that leave you? If you're within 10 years of retirement and you still feel that nagging sense that something could go wrong, I want you to ask yourself this question. Do I have a framework for making decisions when things change? Not a projection, not a Monte Carlo simulation, a true framework. Because here's what I've learned. Confidence doesn't come from having all of the answers. It comes from knowing you have a process for finding the answers when you need them. You're not going to know what the market will do next year. You're not going to know if inflation will spike or if healthcare costs will surprise you. But if you have a framework that tells you how to respond to those things, you don't need to know. You're prepared either way. And that's the shift. That's how retirement stops feeling fragile and starts feeling secure. Not because nothing will ever go wrong, but because you'll know what to do when it does. This is a lot to think through, and it's not something you need to figure out all at once. That's why I put together a short email series that walks through how these decisions connect, slowly and clearly. It's called the Retirement Readiness Email Course, and it's designed to help you build that framework without getting overwhelmed. So drop a comment below on how this changes your thinking about retirement. And if you want clarity without getting overwhelmed, start with the Retirement Readiness Email Course. It's a series of short, focused emails that walk you through the key decisions you'll need to make: income, taxes, and investments, and how they all connect. No fluff, no pressure, just clear guidance. You can sign up at the link in the description, or if you'd rather get a snapshot of where you stand right now, complete the Retirement Readiness Scorecard. It takes just a minute, and it'll show you exactly where you're strong and where you might need to shore things up. And if you found this helpful, do me a favor. Hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss future videos. I release new content every week to help you retire with clarity and confidence. Remember this: adjusting isn't failing, it's how good plans stay intact. Clarity beats guessing every time.